I've done a lot of videos on my opinions on which skills and commanders are the best in Lord of the Rings Rise to War, so I thought it'd be a fun change of pace to make a video about which skills do I think are the worst in Lord of the Rings Rise to War, as well as maybe some suggestions on how they could be changed. Before we get into it, this video is sponsored by Codashop. Allow me to introduce you to Codashop, a platform that will allow you to top up your accounts in most or all of your favorite games. Codashop partners directly with some of the largest publishers in the business to allow for a quick, safe, and seamless purchase experience when buying in-game items or currencies. Codashop's partnerships allow them to immediately send your purchases to your account, just like if you're using the Google or Apple stores. They even support sending gifts directly to your friends. Using Codashop is quick and easy. First, go to Codashop.com or use my affiliate link in the description of this video. Next, select the game that you wish to make a purchase for. Fill out the required account information, select your top-up, choose your payment method, and enter an email address where you'd like to receive a receipt. And you're done! Topping up your accounts has never been easier, and thank you to Codashop for sponsoring this video. Alright, so I'm not going to talk about the tip master type skills, the skills that improve the speed at which you do tips or the amount of experience you get for tips, because I think they are pretty universally well known as being pretty terrible, at least for PvP combat. I'm also not going to focus on stat buffs such as Gallant. Any of these percent stat increases, in my opinion, are almost never worth the point investment. The first skill I do want to talk about, though, is Air. I think this is one of the worst titles in the game, in my opinion. It says, every round, all allied units gain some defense, and it stacks once per round. I don't know why every round per round is in there. That's a bit redundant, but that's beside the point. I think that this skill is not particularly fantastic for two reasons. A, the early rounds of combat matter the most in this game, much more than later rounds of combat due to how damage mechanics work. And secondly, defense does have some amount of diminishing returns as far as I understand, and it's pretty easy to get on gear. So what happens in practice is if you're using units like Guard of the Tower, Cataphracts, Guardians even, although I don't know why you would be using Guardians on Boromir, especially if you have this unique item. But anyway, they're already going to have plenty of defense from your equipment, and gaining more defense is barely going to increase the amount of mitigation that those units are going to have. And I guess a third reason is it only affects physical damage, so adding defense is completely useless against commanders like Galadriel, Sauron, Evilside in general. So yeah, one of the worst skills in the game, in my opinion. Another pretty bad one is Arwen's River's Wrath. The skill is okay-ish for 1 point. I don't know if this is intentional or accidental on the part of the devs, but this skill has a cooldown of 5 rounds. That means it goes off on round 6, and that's it. It does a minor amount of focus damage and has a chance to inflict stun for 1 round. I think with skills like this, the devs either need to make every skill that has a chance, or at least most skills that have a chance to inflict stun, start at 100%, like Wizard and Blindside. If we go and take a look at Gandalf the Grey, for a mere 1 point, Wizard 100% of the time stuns 2 enemies, and Blindside 100% of the time stuns an enemy. So I think there's a little bit of inconsistency with skills like this. The Ring Wraith, Nazgul Screech, which is attached to Ring Wraith, is another one of those where you actually have to level it up in order to guarantee the stun. And I think that's a little bit awkward. I think the other thing they could do to change River's Wrath is make it go off on like round 1 or round 2, and then have it be a 5-round cooldown, so then it goes off once at the beginning of combat and once at the end of combat. If you're going to go that route, I don't think they should give it a 100% chance to stun, because stunning everybody twice for 1 point would make this a pretty ridiculous 1-point wonder skill. As far as Air goes, we'll go ahead and pull up another guy that has a not great skill who also has Air. I think the way to fix this would be Have this have a upfront large amount of defense, similar to like how Swan Knights work. So you get a massive defense boost up front and then have it decay over time. I think that would make it significantly better. Another bad title is Prince of Dol Amroth. This is actually fantastic if you just put 1 point into it, because you gain stun and madness immunity on your mounted units for 1 point. That is fantastic. However, gaining 1 speed per point after that is extremely underwhelming. And the max level effect isn't even that good. This gives the Knight Cataphract Swan Knight line plus 6 HP at max level. However, if we were to compare that to somebody like Theoden, this guy is giving plus 1 base attack per point, which is one of the best titles in the game. And he's giving all mounted units plus 5 HP. The big issue with the Swan Knight line getting HP is you're not really going to be running just a full army of Swan Knights on this guy, because they're tanky units, they don't deal a lot of damage, and this guy also doesn't seem like he's a particularly fantastic damage dealer in and of himself. So you're going to be losing out on a lot of this plus HP if you're bringing things like Bow Knights, Cavaliers, Riders, Ram Riders. If you're bringing other mounted units, which you probably should on this guy, then you're losing a lot of value from the max level effect of Prince of Dol Amroth. Moving on to another T2 commander, I want to talk about Kelleborn. This guy has 2 skills that are not particularly wonderful in my opinion. The first being Grey Elf. This allows all allied elves to have a 1% chance per point, so a 15% chance at max level to evade damage. As I've said before, evade, avoidance, they use these interchangeably. I do hope that eventually they just settle on one of those 2 terms. The reason that I don't think this is very good is 15% chance to avoid damage for 15 points is not a very high percent chance to evade damage. It also applies only to elven units, which isn't the worst because this guy's going to want to run elves anyway. However, this title is completely countered by Pursuit, and it's not even that good to begin with, in my opinion. A lot more people are running Pursuit these days because Gil-galad is running rampant on a bunch of servers. So you put 15 points into this, and somebody with Pursuit comes along, and congratulations, you just don't have 15 skill points anymore. Additionally, Lord of Lorien, I think they should really change this skill, because right now it only affects March Wardens. Isildur has a similar skill, and even we were just talking about Imrahil, he has a similar skill that affects just one type of unit, but their skills affect that entire troop type. So in Imrahil's, it hits everything between swans, knights, cataphracts, and horsemen, and with Isildur's skill, it hits Rangers, Dunedain, and Rangers of the North. I really wish this affected Sentinels and the lower tier March Wardens, because unless you're playing Lothlorien, this skill, this title, is completely wasted. Another commander that suffers from a similar problem is Kirdan and Lord of the Havens. This says when Noldor longshots are not using volley. Volley is the skill that they use to do damage. They don't actually ever normally attack. When they're not doing their volley skill, then they receive less damage. In this case, I don't really know how you would change it, except you could say maybe long shots, whenever they're not doing damage, then they receive less damage, and then maybe like Sentinels and other Elven archers, they just always have a damage received that's half as much as what the Noldor long shots get on their turns where they're not active. Kind of a weird skill, and Noldor long shots are already a super weird unit anyway, so this is up there definitely in my book of skills that I would likely never take. And we'll finish things off by talking about a very weird skill on Elrond. And I don't know if there's some weird quirk in the game mechanics. If somebody knows for sure, please let me know in the comment section. But Starlight says against enemy orcs, Uruk-hai, and trolls, they take plus 2% damage per point. And if we compare that to everybody's favorite champion of the light, this says all allies, damage against orcs, Uruk-hai, and trolls plus 4%. So I could put points into Champion of the Light and gain 4% extra damage per point against those units, or I could put points into Starlight and gain 2% damage per point against those units. The only thing that is a little bit different about these skills, and that's why I said maybe there is some weird game mechanic that I don't fully understand, is this says all allies are doing more damage, and this says that these enemies are receiving more damage. Now, I think that those work exactly the same. However, I could be wrong about that. Like I said, if somebody knows if damage received is actually in some way different than a damage buff to your own units, please do let me know. The only other thing is, like, maybe they thought that Velaya's Ringbearer would just be too good, or Elrond himself would be too good if he could double dip on Champion of the Light. However, I think this could be changed with a much more interesting skill, because if you're fighting evil, you're probably going to want the White Council tree anyway because of High Alert. And so Champion of the Light is just kind of a natural thing that you would take anyway. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. What is, in your opinion, some of the worst skills in Lord of the Rings Rise to War? Catch you in the next one. Phoenix, over and out.